Hi, friends. Welcome to the Pockets of Paradise podcast. I'm your host, Megan Tedder, and I am so glad you're here. This very first episode is a little introduction, a chance for you to get to know me, the heart behind Pockets of Paradise, and the journey that led me here. I'll be sharing the vision that sparked this idea, the mission behind it, and why I believe finding little pockets of beauty, hope, and healing in everyday life matters so much. Pockets of Paradise was created from a deep desire to help people slow down, breathe, and notice the goodness that still exists, even in the middle of hard seasons, messy moments in real life. It's also about learning how to recognize and tap into the presence of God in our everyday lives. My hope is that this podcast becomes a place where you feel encouraged, seen, and reminded that you are not alone in your story. Again, I'm so excited you're here, and I truly hope you'll join me on this journey as we learn to notice, create, and protect the little pockets of paradise in our everyday lives. You belong here. All right. Hi, I'm Megan Tedder. Welcome to episode 1. To really understand Pockets of Paradise, I want to just share a little bit of my story with you today, or maybe a lot of bit of my story. We'll see how it goes, but I want you to kind of understand who I am, where I'm coming from, and where Pockets of Paradise even began, because it was actually given to me by God, and it's been my precious pearl that I've been holding close to my chest for a long time. So I'm excited to share that with you. To begin, I just want to kind of tell you that my name is Megan Tedder. I am born and raised in Central Florida, Frostproof, Florida, to be exact. I'm like a 5th or 6th generation Floridian, which I'm really proud of. And I am married to my best friend, Clint Tedder. We have 2 beautiful babies. We have Dawson, who's 4, and he is all superheroes right now. And Melina, who is 3, and she is all sass and princesses right now. And I could not love either one of them any more than I already do, I don't think. And I am also a Christian counselor here at High Point Church. And I have been here for 3 years, which is super exciting. So High Point Church, as you know, has Providence Center, which is many things, but one of the things it is a business incubator and counseling center. So my business is called Pockets of Paradise, LLC, and I rent my office space from the church. So they have been such a blessing, and it's been an honor to just work with the community, but also work with High Point, because I just value their leadership so much in my life. I would not be who I am without the staff and leadership here. And I'm sure you'll hear more of those stories as these podcasts roll out, but I just wanted to shout out to them and gratitude for allowing me to be here. But before I start how I got into counseling, Christian counseling, I just wanted to take a moment to tell you why I love it and my heart behind it. I'm so thankful that High Point has given me the opportunity to be here, because it's just, when I try to explain to people what counseling is to me and what that experience is like, it's hard to put into words, because it just feels like sacred ground. People come in and they're real and they're raw, and they bring their life with them. They bring their baggage with them. They bring things that they want to change, that they want healed. They bring things that they want to bring to the feet of Jesus. And I, of all people, have the honor and privilege of facilitating that between them and Jesus. That's how I view counseling. It's Christian counseling is just me holding their hand and putting their hand in Jesus's hand and saying, here you go. This is the science of what I know with my degree. This is what I know about how your body and your brain are made, but this is also what I know about our Creator. And this is how He wants to heal you. This is the truth about your identity. This is the life He wants to breathe into you. And then as I see them step into obedience towards Him and step into a true relationship, like out of religion and into relationship with the God of the universe who made them and knows them and loves them. And I get to watch them come back to life. And it is the highest honor of my life. I get a front row seat to see the fruit of what God is doing in and through them. And I gush about my job, because I love it so much, because I so often don't feel worthy to get a front row seat to some of the things I get a front row seat to. And this podcast is going to have a lot of those stories in it. So I'm so excited to share just how God is moving and all around you all the time. And in a world that is just so inundated with bad news, there's so much good. There's so much good happening. And so I'm excited to share some of that with you. But to kind of tell you a little bit more about me and my background, I was a middle child. So if you know anything about middle children, you probably already know without me having to say I was a bit of a handful growing up. I always had a big heart, big emotions. I was a messy kid, funny. I had a knack for getting in trouble, and I also had a knack for being funny enough to get out of trouble. But if you ask my parents, they always giggle and say, "Yep, Megan was our middle child. She was the one." So, but I grew up in a loving home. I had incredible parents. I have a dad who always made the home feel safe, and I had a mom who always made the home feel like a hug. She just had a knack for hospitality was her gift, really. She just made it feel like a place you didn't want to leave. And even now, when people go to her house, they linger because you just feel the presence of the Lord there. And I'm just so blessed that that was my childhood that I got to grow up in. And then I just remember as a kid, I never really felt like I fit in. I had friends. I always had friends. I had an incredible family. But every other little kid knew what they wanted to do for a living. They knew they had dreams and they had clear-cut ideas. And I was a very big dreamer always, but I never really knew what my path was going to be. And as I got older into high school, everyone's asking me, what are you going to do with your life? And I'm like, I have no idea. So I always laughed and said, I'm not a cookie cutter kid. And I looked up to my sister so much, who's 7 years older than me, and she was a cookie cutter kid. She knew she wanted to be a NICU nurse. They had papers from her kindergarten class of her writing down, I want to be a nurse for babies. She knew out the womb what she was going to be doing with her life. And I envied her so much because she went to school and she nailed it. And she went and she did what she wanted to do and she did it well. And I'm over here just getting by, trying to figure out what the heck is my purpose in life. And I laugh about that now because cookie cutter people are incredible people and we need them, but we also need the creatives of the world and we need the people that don't fit in the cookie cutter, like me. And it took a long time for me to understand that, but now I'm so thankful that the Lord revealed that to me over time. And so I remember going to college for my undergrad at Flagler in St. Augustine, go Saints. And, I originally went for journalism because I love to write and I love justice and I want the truth to be told. And I wanted to, I had big dreams about sharing stories that would change the world and, all the things. And I get into this school, which is an incredible school, but I quickly learned that I did not get to write about what I wanted to write about. I was in journalism. I realized you really don't have as much freedom as I thought you did. And so I had kind of a crisis. And I remember, Flagler is St. Augustine. It's a beach town. And I remember I had a meeting with my advisor that was assigned to me. And her name was Mrs. B. And I went into that meeting that I forgot I had. I was in a bathing suit and a cover-up, if that tells you how serious I was about life at the time. And I went in and she said, Miss Maxwell, which was my maiden name, she said, what are your plans here? What are you wanting to do? And I remember I looked her in the face and I busted into tears. I've never met this woman in my life. I busted into tears and I said, I have no idea. I have no idea. And she looked at me and she set down her glasses and she set down her pen and she goes, Megan, what do you love? And I'm, snotty mess. And I said, I just love people, but I can't do that for a living. And she kind of smiled and she looked at me and she said, I'm the head of the psychology department and I think you would do really well in psychology because it's the study of people. And if you love people, we can learn about people. And I said, okay, So I switched my major, not knowing I was going to be a counselor, but that's just a moment that was pivotal in my life. And so I just kept walking. That was the next step. And so I went through school. I ended up taking her counseling classes, fell in love with it. It changed my life. I did individual and group counseling with her, and it changed my life. It was a gift, and just another dot on the map that God was leading me on. Looking back now, hindsight's 2020, but what a gift that was, and what a season of healing that was for some of the knuckleheaded mistakes I had made leading up to that. And then, there's a lot behind that story. I'm sure I'll share another day, but that's what I'm going to share today. And then after I graduated from Flagler, I was in a very serious relationship, and we had big plans, and he lived international. We were going to move, we're talking about moving international. We're talking about, life plans. We're figuring out what we're going to do together. And I made some knuckleheaded decisions, and he made some knuckleheaded decisions, and all of my life plans dissolved in a matter of hours. And I remember I just felt like the rug had been pulled out from underneath me, and every plan I had ever made for myself was just in ashes. And I said, okay, God, you have me. You have all of me. I have nothing but you. So I'm open to whatever you want to do. You let me know. And that next day, I think it was the next day, Bonnie Barker, who's the pastor here at High Point Church, reached out to me. And I had not spoken with her in a while. I had gone on a few missions trips with her to Honduras when I was in high school. And for whatever reason, she reached out to me and said, hey, would you like to grab lunch? And she was 3 hours away from me, but I said, yes, get me out. Yes, I would love to grab lunch. I need to get out of here. So I hopped in my car and I worshiped all the way there and cried my eyes out. And I get to lunch. Bonnie has no idea that any of this is happening in my life. And, I get to the lunch. It was at Crazy Fish with her and her husband, Keith. And she said, so me and Keith have been praying, and we've been thinking, and we think we want you to move to Honduras to be a house mom down there, because we just want someone to help, create a culture of fun and healing for them. And we know you love them so much, and we just would love for you to be down there. And I said, yeah, let me pray about it. Let me think about it. So long story short, I went down to Honduras with them, and God confirmed my prayer in an amazing way that I'm sure I'll share that story with you another time too. And I ended up moving down to Honduras for a while to be one of the house moms down there for girls who have been orphaned and abused, and some even human trafficked. So it was an amazing experience. And those girls taught me more about love and resilience and faith than I think anyone ever has. So that was a beautiful experience, but it was another dot on my map of, wow, I love people. I love connecting to people in moments of what should be, what the enemy wanted to take them out with, and watch God turn it to something good. So that was another little dot on my map towards Christian counseling. And then there was a political coup in Honduras. I don't know if you knew about that, but it was not fun to be in. And I had to flee the country very quickly. I left most of my stuff there, which was a really hard and sad thing. But God was with me even then, and He held me together there. And when I got back on the ground in America, I felt like I was starting over again. I had no idea what I was doing and didn't understand why I was ripped away from that. And again, hindsight is 2020. I think the Lord was protecting me from some pretty gnarly things. And so I just trusted His plan. I trusted His will, and I ended up back home. And so I worked for my dad for a little bit and helped with his nonprofit. And then one day I was talking to my now husband about my desires to work with people, and I'm thinking about doing counseling. Like, counseling keeps coming to my mind. And Clint's like, well, go for it. What do you have to lose? Like, what's the holdup here? And so I said, you know what? I think I will. So I had my own place at the time. I was in Lakeland, and Southeastern University was like 5 minutes from my house. And so I went online and I looked at when their enrollment was for a master's in professional counseling. And the deadline was, I think, 24 hours later. And I thought, oh my gosh. And I said, you know what? If I get everything in 24 hours, Lord, and I get accepted, then that's that. So the next 24 hours, I was scrambling like a crazy person to get all my transcripts and my letters of recommendation. And I wrote my essay and I got all the things. And I got it to the last 30 minutes. I got it in. I got it all in. And a few days later, I got a call and they asked me to come in for an interview. And I had the interview and they said, we would love to have you be a part of our program. And so I did that program. And it was also an incredible blessing in my life and just affirmed that this is exactly what I want to do. And during that time, while I was there, I got married and had a baby. A lot of life was happening all at once. But I was driving down the road. This was 2019. I was pregnant. And I remember I was just singing worship and driving down the road. And I said, Lord, give me a heart to dream. When I was a little girl, my dad put a sticky note on, he was always writing notes, still does, but he was always writing notes. And he put a sticky note on my mirror where I got ready every morning in high school. And I just remember seeing this quote every morning that he wrote, and he said, dream dreams so big that only God can get the credit for them. And so it had been a long time since I've been dreaming because I was in survival mode or working for someone else and trying to do the best of my ability where I was, which is where I should have been. And but it was finally at a point where I'm like, okay, I'm almost done with grad school. I want to dream again. And so I asked God, I said, Lord, help me dream. Help me have a dream that only you get the credit for. I want to dream with you. I don't want it to be mine. I want it to be yours. And I'm just pouring my heart out to him. And all of a sudden, I have my very first vision. And I'm driving down the road, which sounds like it's not safe, and it probably isn't. But I remember it just felt like a download. It was like the most vivid daydream I've ever had in my life. And it just felt like a download is what I would explain. It was just like a wave of inspiration that didn't come from me. And so I pull off the side of the road and I wrote it all down as it was coming to me. And he showed me groups of people like around tables and in living rooms and in counseling offices. And like he just showed me people coming back to life through connection and through his presence. And he gave me the name Pockets of Paradise. And I said, okay, Pockets of Paradise. So I wrote that down. And then he kind of downloaded. It's so weird to explain it because it was like so much information, but it was this knowing and understanding of the information in a very real time and quick time. It was just a download. It's the best way I can describe it. And so, but to break down what I downloaded, he kind of just reminded me and told me the story of his presence and how in the beginning in the garden was paradise and there was nothing that hindered his presence from us, and heaven and earth were one. And then sin came into the world, and because he's a holy God, his presence can't mingle with sin. And so his presence was ripped away from us, and we had to have sacrifices to access his presence again. And for a while, the Israelites carried around the Ark of the Covenant, which is what his presence was carried around in. And there were strict rules. And I mean, if you touched it out of line, you died. Like it was, no one accessed it except the high priest. And there were rituals and sacrifices that had to be made for just a small few to access this Ark of the Covenant. And then they built the temple, and they had the different levels of courtyards to the temple. So a certain amount of people could be in the outer courtyard, and then a certain amount of people could be a little bit closer, and then a certain amount of people could be a little bit closer, and then only the high priest could go in the Holy of Holies. Only one person could go on behalf of everyone into the presence and glory of the Lord. And then Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice. And Jesus said that I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father except through me. And I love that the doorways in the temple, in the tabernacle temple, to get to his presence were called the way, the truth, and the life. And Jesus said, no, now I am the lamb. I am the sacrifice. I am the doorway. I have ripped open the door. And when he died on the cross, he tore the veil between God's presence in us. And he gave us access to him again. And now what I love is that the Bible says that our bodies are the temple. And the Holy Spirit, the presence of the holy living God, is in us now. He dwells within us now. And when you think about that and you meditate on that, people would do anything to access his presence. And we have it 24/7 with us. And it's amazing because it's funny because you grow up in church and you hear that all the time, but you don't understand the intensity of it until you start to pursue a relationship with the Holy Spirit yourself. And so we are these little pockets of paradise walking around on earth. We are where heaven connects to earth. And we're called to cultivate these moments and these connections that usher in his presence. And so that's where Pockets of Paradise came in. And that's like the download that he gave me that I didn't understand. I said, wow, that's so amazing. I was on fire. I was, writing it all down. I had this beautiful vision. And then 2020 came and the world shut down. And I was like, oh, okay. Thanks for that, God. But I don't really know what you want me to do with that. So I just prayed about it and I kept it in my back pocket and I didn't tell anyone. And during COVID, you all remember that time. It was not fun. We were all isolated. We all lost a lot of connection. And I decided to be a little rebellious and do what I called family dinners. So friends that were family dinners. And I did it in my backyard or on my back porch, depending on if it was raining. And it started with a few people. And before I left Lakeland to come back to this side of Polk County, I think the last time I did it there was probably 30 to 40 people in my yard. And we just had folding chairs and folding tables and I cooked food. And you just saw the connection and the rich friendships and how people were just craving that. And that was another seed planted of like, this is what I'm made to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I want to bring that hospitality that my mama has and bring the Jesus that I have and create spaces where people can connect and slow down and breathe and feel just a little bit of heaven here on earth, the way that things were meant to be, a little bit of paradise right here. And so that was another dot. And then a couple years later, I did what I called a mini retreat, which was like a day-long retreat. It was beautiful. It was intense. It was the best food, massages. The Holy Spirit showed up in incredible ways. It was amazing, and God showed up. But at the end of it, the Lord said, I blessed this time, but this isn't it. You need to wait. And I'm like, wait for what? I've been waiting years now. It's 3 years at this point. But okay, I'm not good at waiting, but I'm going to wait. So then he just said gently, like he does, he's like, you need to learn. You need to learn and you need to soak up me. You need to connect more with me. So I took a few years to do that. And I took Gatekeepers class here at High Point to learn more about the Holy Spirit. And I was listening to podcasts and I was doing Bible studies and I was talking to my mentors and I was, my prayer life changed. Like my roots of faith and spirituality just flourished in that time. And what's amazing is the Lord was preparing my heart for one of the biggest trials my family ever had to go through. And that was not this November, but the November before, my dad actually died for 17 minutes, met the Lord, and came back. But we had a much different experience on this side. It was the most intense spiritual thing I've ever experienced in my life, and I'll never be the same from it. And I'm sure I'll share that story with you later too. I have so much to share with you, but how gracious of God to give me that time to build a foundation to strengthen my faith, because it was rock solid when that came. And it was only because the Lord had been preparing my heart for years before that. And I'm so thankful for that. But now I have so much in my pocket to give to you, and I'm so excited to give it away. And another thing during that waiting season is I was counseling, individual counseling. I still do that. Love it. Like I said earlier. And God was just affirming that people desire connection. They need connection with each other. They need connection with God. They need to feel, they need to know what is true in a world that is screaming so many opinions and fear-mongering things. And it's just, we need the presence of God here on earth. And we as Christians get to usher that in, and we get to allow his presence to change things here. We don't have to wait. We don't have to grit our teeth. We don't have to live in fear. We can be bold. We can have joy. We can have peace. We can have connection in the face of all of that. We're not living in la la land pretending like it's not happening. We have authority to walk in it. And that's very different. And I want to share that with you here on this podcast. So last year, the Lord said, okay, I want you to do it. Try again. And I said, okay. So I did a dinner party, which was great. And then I did what I called living room sessions, where I had 5 girls come to my house for 5 weeks, and we focused on one thing that the Lord laid on their heart, right? And so we deep dove into one thing, and they all wanted to learn how to hear from God. And each one of them needed it for different reasons, wanted it for different reasons. And the Lord showed up and spoke for each of them very specifically and beautifully. And it was amazing. It was amazing to witness. And it was a Bible study / counseling group, all wrapped up in one. And it was like, in that moment, the Lord was like, there it is. Like, you are going to create pockets of paradise in yourself. You're going to help disciple people in individual counseling. You're going to help in group counseling. You're going to create dinners where people can show up and experience and taste and see that the Lord is good. And then this podcast comes up. And I remembered in my season of waiting, someone prophesied over me. And I won't tell you the whole thing because that's between me and the Lord. But one thing that stood out was He's going to give you a voice that's going to allow you to share your gifts with many, and He's going to multiply you for the kingdom. And so podcast is not in my wheelhouse. I'm not very comfortable with it. I'm a little awkward, but I'm a lot of fun. And that was not on my radar. And so Ben came up to me and he's like, hey, I would love for you to consider doing a podcast. And I said, I'll pray about it. And the Lord brought that memory back to my mind. And I had completely forgotten about it. And I said, you know what? This isn't about how awkward I feel. This is more so about giving away what God has given to me. And so that's what this podcast is going to be. It's going to be all kinds of things, but I hope it's good. I hope it blesses you. I just hope that you feel encouraged, seen. I hope that you have a fresh, eternal perspective on life. I hope that you feel hope. And I hope that you feel closer to Jesus every time you listen, because if anything else, I just want you to know that He is good, He is real as rain, and He loves you deeply. So thank you for tuning in for our very first podcast. And until next time, keep looking for the pockets of paradise in your life. They're often right where God is already waiting for you. So I'm excited to talk to you next time.